Welcome everyone to learning Parshat Shavuot with Rav Shlomo. Tonight we are learning Parshat Nasso. I do want to mention though that for possible factors beyond my control and partly in my control, it's not clear we're going to have class the next 2 weeks. Everyone, please check your email, your WhatsApp. We always announce it. It's like 50-50 right now. Some of the factors are beyond my control. It's not, like I said, it's not clear we will have class the next 2 weeks. Stay tuned. And if we don't, we will just continue afterwards. So beginning with Parshat Nasso, for those who have the book, we're on page 151. And it begins with the beginning of the Parsha. The name is Nasso, which means to lift up. It's from the language of lifting up, elevating. But it says an interesting thing. It says, Nasso et Rosh B'nai Yisrael Gam Hem. You should lift up the heads of the children of Gershon. Gershon is one of the families of the Levites, also them. So the question is, what does it mean, also them? Well, if we look at the previous Parsha, it began giving instructions as to what happens when they take down the tabernacle in the desert and they reconstruct it. Meaning when there were time to travel, it had to be taken apart and carried and then put up again. And so the Torah includes instructions of how to do it and who will do it. And it was divided among the 3 sons in the family of Levi. And so therefore, it started with Kehat. But it's interesting because Gershon was the elder. So why did it start with Kehat? Because he and his family carried the most important parts of the Mishkan, the ark and the menorah, the inner sanctuary. And Gershon carried more the draperies and the coverings. And so one might think, or they might think, they're not so important. They don't have the premier job. So it starts by saying, Nasso et Rosh B'nai Gershon Gam Hem. They also have an important role to play. But here we have a paradox, and Rav Shlomo points it out immediately. He says that the word Gershon comes from the word to be driven out. So now I'm reading. So it means that the Ribono Shel Olam is saying to lift up the heads of those who think that they have been driven out. In other words, Rav Shlomo has a long piece here, and he's basing it on the name of Gershon. And Gershon, as we're going to see, comes in a number of different places, but it means to be driven out. As we're going to see, it means divorce. Moshe named one of his 2 sons Gershon. He said, because I was a stranger in a strange land. He felt he was in exile. So the question is why does Gershon have this name? Well, here we could see, because since he was the firstborn, but he was not given the more important job in deconstructing and constructing the Mishkan. So they might have felt pushed away, driven out. So the Torah is coming and saying, no, it's not true. So that's what Rav Shlomo is basing this on. So let's continue. So he said, now listen to something very strong here. Divorce is called Gerushin, same language as the name Gershon, but it actually means to be driven out from the house. In the case of a divorce, the woman is, as it were, driven out of the house. In our day, it could be the man who has to leave the house. We find the word Gerushin between a husband and a wife. But the first time we see this word is when Adam was driven out from paradise. It says, Vayigaresh et Adam. God sent Adam into exile. He caused him to have to leave the Garden of Eden. This can mean that God drove Adam out or that he divorced him, because the word for divorce also comes from this, Gerushin. Later on, when Cain killed his brother, God told him, you are going to have to run all over the world. You'll never find a place. So Cain said to God, Hein garashta oti hayom. You have driven me out this day. So Rav Shlomo he's doing a very, very typical thing when you have a word in the Torah. First of all, you want to know what it means. So you have the name Gershon, but you have to look at what do the letters of the word Gershon mean. So Rav Shlomo is pointing out, but then a very typical way of learning the text is, well, where else does this word appear? So here, Rav Shlomo is going all the way back to the Garden of Eden and to Cain and Abel. So hear what he says. You cannot say you have been driven out from a place you were never in. Here we are talking about one of the families of the Levim, who were chosen from all the Jewish people. They were the holiest tribe. And yet, one of the families was called Gershon, which means that they were driven out. Rav Shlomo asks, what's the story here? Now, as he's building up like the Torah that he wants to give over, something always went wrong with them. There was always something that didn't work out. So here he's just alluding to that in the Chumash, on a number of occasions, Levi was involved with very negative or controversial kinds of things. With the whole story of Shechem and the story of selling Yosef, Levi is involved in this. It's only after the making of the golden calf, and Moshe says, who is for God, that the tribe of Levi make their huge transition. But here Rav Shlomo is talking about that the name Gershon is coming from an earlier history of the Levim, where they weren't on a good path. So we continue. They, meaning the Levim, wanted so much to connect, but it just didn't go. So God said to Moshe, Nasso et Rosh, lift up their heads. Rabbi Leible Eiger, a great Hasidic master, says the deepest depths. What does it mean to lift up the head? Just in general, what does it mean to lift up the head? To lift up my thoughts means to suddenly realize that whatever happens to me is much deeper than I think it is. It's much higher than I think. A person has to realize one very important thing. Imagine if after God drove Adam out of the paradise, he would have given up. Because remember, it says that he drove him out, but it's the same language. It could be of divorce. And so Rav Shlomo says, Adam could take it in one of two ways. God is driving me out. I better fix things up. Or he's divorcing me. Therefore, the story is over. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, but it seems I'm no longer connected with God. So it says that Adam, he could have given up. Okay, that's it. God doesn't want me to be in paradise. I might as well become an animal. where would we be? Obviously, Adam realized it's got to be deeper than that. In other words, he looked at the circumstances of his life, and he understood that there's a teaching here, that God is trying to teach me something. There's something I need to fix. Instead of, I'm just giving up. I'm just giving up. That's what happened to Cain. When God didn't accept his offering, and even though God came to him and said, you don't have to feel so bad. You can fix it up. Not a problem. You can fix it up. But Cain didn't take it that way. He thought he was like exiled from God. And the next thing you know is he's killing his brother. So Rabbi Leible Eiger says, what are we walking away from this Shavuot after standing at Mount Sinai? So here, Rav Shlomo is making a connection. This parsha is always coming right after Bamidbar. Again, this year in outside of Israel, you have your own reading, but it's still, the next parsha is Nasso. So Leible Eiger is saying, well, how can we connect what we're learning here with what we're supposed to learn about Mount Sinai? So here, I'm not going to read every word because we have a lot to do here. So he says, Rav Shlomo says, you don't need Mount Sinai so much to show you how to get close to God. This is something you can learn. You can learn from tradition, you can learn from books, you can learn by example. We can learn how to get close to God. But he says, so what do I need Mount Sinai for? He says, for when I'm absolutely driven out, when I feel driven out, when I'm mamish giving up. I've tried so hard my whole life. This is the 2 billionth time I've tried to become a Yidula. I swore to myself, I'll do this, and I'll do that. And I'm constantly giving up. He says, so suddenly when I stand on Mount Sinai, I realize who knows what kind of great plans God has for his people. About what do I know? And above all, what makes me think that I'm driven out from God? Maybe I'm driven in. So here Rav Shlomo is making a point that, of course, we need God and we need the Torah when things are going good. But he's saying, even more than that, we need a connection to God like we had at Mount Sinai when things aren't going so good. So I don't feel that I'm driven away, that there's a Gerushin here, there's a divorce here. Mount Sinai is not only where God is telling me what to do and what not to do. The deepest depths of Mount Sinai is that I know that God is actually dealing with me. And when I feel that God is actually dealing with me, everything becomes important. What do I know about what I'm doing in this world? What do I know about why I have to be in this world? And even if you don't know, but you are aware that you don't know of this, but God is lifting up your head. Your whole outlook has to be completely different. Your head has to be somewhere else. So here we're learning from the few introductory words that God is lifting up the head of Gershon, also them. In other words, as it says in the book of Shmuel, no one is left behind. No one will be left out. And this is a great teaching, of course, from Rabbi Nachman. Ein yeyush ba'olam. There is no giving up in this world. And I remember very, very fondly a good friend of mine who passed away, who was the Rabbi in our shul for many years, and he gave incredible mishaberachs, blessings to the people who were called up to the Torah. And he would say all the time, very emphatically, never, ever, ever, ever give up. This is Rabbi Nachman. Ein yeush ba'olam. There's no giving up in this world. So Rav Shlomo says at the end here, when Mashiach is coming, God won't take us back to paradise. But you know what will happen? Suddenly we will realize paradise was here the whole time. That's all there is to it. That's how he ends his piece. That's all there is to it. So what does he mean at the end here? Is when we feel driven out, then we've lost paradise. But as long as we have a connection to God, no matter how many times we've fallen, we've learned this many, many times recently. Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. 7 times that tzadik falls and gets up. As long as you get up, then you're connected. You're always connected. Even when you fall, as long as you know that you will be able to get up, then you're always connected to God. The problem is when we give up and we feel we're not connected to God, and then we lose hope. So here Rav Shlomo is saying is that when Mashiach comes, in a certain way we'll realize paradise was here the whole time. Like it was more of a state of consciousness that we were driven out. It's here all the time. And you know when we can feel it the most? On Shabbos. On Shabbos, we can really feel we were never driven out of paradise. We're there. So that's the first piece from Rav Shlomo. This is I call it a constant theme in his teachings of really very much based on Rabbi Nachman, this idea of never, ever, ever give up. Always, as long as you don't give up, you're still connected. Okay, the next piece, page 154, is called Heavy Loads. So now he's going back to the previous parsha, and we mentioned already it was the family of Kehat that carried the holy ark and the most holy things in the sanctuary. So Rav Shlomo starts, everyone knows that the first group that carried the tabernacle was the Bnei Kehat. They carried the holy ark where the tablets were placed. And then he has a whole paragraph with different opinions as to how heavy what were the tablets. And some hold that they were very, very heavy. They were almost needed beyond human strength to be able to hold them up. So he says, then he quotes the Gemara from Sota that says, the Gemara says that the Torah is noseh et nosav, meaning the Torah carries you. You don't have to carry the Torah. It's not a matter that we're carrying the Torah. The Torah is carrying you. This is very, very similar in a different context where there's a very, very well-known saying is, it's not so much that Israel keeps the Torah as the Torah, keeps Shabbat, but the Shabbat keeps the people of Israel. So it's a very similar kind of idea. So then he tells the story of Reb David Moshe of Cherkov. And it's told about him, he was a little bit out of this world, that at least to everyone's experience, they never saw him eat. They never were aware that he ever slept. And he, even in his elderly years, when he was called up to lift up the Torah, he was able to do it. And so the Hasidim wondered how he was able to do it. So he says to them like this. He says, the Torah is only heavy when you don't keep it. But when you keep it, it's not heavy. And so the same thing with Bnei Kehat, because they were dedicated to doing their holy work, they had the strength to lift the ark, but really the ark was lifting them. There's another story that was actually in the edition of the Wonders this week that we send out to everyone. And this was of Merila Premishlan. And apparently there was a mikvah, but it was at the top of a very tall mountain, very difficult to get there. And it always was like slippery and muddy. And so hardly anyone went up there. But he would go up there. And one time when he came down with no problem. The Hasidim asked him, Rabbi, how do you do it? Everyone else who tries it slips down the mountain, gets full of mud. And he answered them, he said, when you're connected to above, you don't fall below. So he was implying that he was able to come down the mountain because he was connected to the upper world. So then Rav Shlomo says, and here everyone has to ask themselves from the deepest place, am I keeping Shabbat or is Shabbat keeping me? If you keep Shabbat, you are not that Shabbosdik yet. It is Shabbat that keeps me. Gavah, where would we be without Shabbat? A person can live without Shabbat, even if you're keeping Shabbat. It's very beautiful. Maybe you'll go to paradise, but Shabbat is not yet on the level of the tablets because you are the one who thinks you are carrying it. In other words, it's just a subtle shift of consciousness. If we're aware all the time that we're keeping Shabbat, there's this law and there's that law, and this is when I daven, and that's when mincha is, and this is what the parsha is, and this is when we eat chicken soup, and this is when we have gefilte fish. We're keeping Shabbat. But what Rav Shlomo is saying is, yeah, we're doing all those things. We should do all those things. But it's not like I am keeping Shabbat. Shabbat is transcendental, surrounding me. I'm doing all of it, but it's really Shabbat that's activating me in the first place. So he's saying everyone should ask themselves, are you keeping Shabbat or is Shabbat keeping you? It's a very subtle point, but worth contemplating. Now, the last piece is a very, very long piece. We'll get through as much of it as we can. And that is, in this week's Parsha, is the priestly blessing, Birkat Kohanim. Birkat Kohanim is 3 different verses. First verse is 3 words, second verse is 5 words, third verse is 7. It's very, very symmetrical. And the first verse is 15 letters, the second verse is 20 letters, and the third verse is 25. So it's almost like a triangle in words and letters. So Reb Shlomo starts like this. Everyone knows that bracha, the concept of blessing, comes from the Hebrew word brecha, a pool of water. That's why in modern Hebrew, a swimming pool is called brechat schia. A schia swimming. Brecha is a pool, a swimming pool. So here, again, he's really starting the way he started the first Torah about, you want to understand who Gershon is, you have to understand the word, what the word means. So if you want to understand what is a blessing is connected to a pool of water. So the way it's explained is, so what's the connection? It's as if God has all of these blessings for us, and they're all kept in a pool in the upper worlds. And to access a blessing, you have to draw down the water into this world. You have a holding tank, and it's holding all these blessings that God would want to give to us. But without saying the blessing is the activation of drawing down the water, the blessing. So Rav Shlomo says like this: the problem for most people is that the inside of our heart is so closed. My pool is not open for blessings. My pool is not open to receive what the Ribbono Shel Olam wants to give me. In other words, as it were, we have a pool in our mind, in our heart, and to fill up our pool, we have to draw down God's blessing from the upper pool. So he's saying, but the problem is, if our pool is closed, it's only open from 4 to 6, and is closed most of the time, then how can you be a vessel for God's blessings? When it comes to our children, we all feel the same way. I want to give my child everything, but there is something I want to give them that can only be received from the depth of their heart. And if, God forbid, this little pool is closed, there's nothing I can do. God wants to give us so much light, but that light can only fit into the deepest depths of my being. So this is a typical, call it Kabbalistic idea of lights and vessels. But here, Rav Shlomo is using the same metaphor for blessings. That if I don't have a proper vessel, or in his language, if my pool here in my heart, in my mind, in my soul is not open, then no blessings can come in. It's closed. So now he starts to connect it to the priestly blessing. The first verse is Yevarechecha Hashem Veyishmerecha, that God should bless you and guard you, keep you. So now after saying what he said, he's going to comment on the first word, which means, and God should bless you. So the first thing is Yevarechecha. God should open that pool inside of you. He should make you a vessel for this deepest flow from heaven. In other words, from God's point of view, he's always willing to pour down blessing. So it's not that, as it were, God has to open up the upper pool. It's more that we need help to open up the lower pool to be able to receive it. If that inside pool gets filled, then everything becomes so precious to me that I have the strength to guard it again. Again, Yevarechecha Hashem Veyishmerecha. God should bless you and guard you. But here, Rav Shlomo is turning it around, that you should have the strength to guard the blessings that you are being given. And the way you do it is by opening up your pool so you can receive it in the first place. But once you receive it, You can't have a hole in the pool. If you have a hole in the pool, then the water is going to flow out. So now he's going to talk about Veyishmerecha, and God will guard you. A lot of times you reach people for a minute. You think you have become best friends, but by the next time you meet, they don't even know your name. So whenever this deepest depth of God's flow reaches you, you have to guard it. You have to guard it. So here it's between you and God, but he's saying it's also between you and other people. You make a really beautiful connection with someone, and both of you promise we're going to call every week or this or that. And in the end, neither one calls, and the water just kind of leaks out of the pool. He says, so whenever this deepest depths of God's flow reaches you, you should guard it. Don't let it go. Keep it inside. You see, friends, the question is not only do you have this deep pool open to receive, the question is also, do you know how to guard it? He says, sometimes we have a very high moment. We can have the highest Shabbos in the world. We can have the most powerful Yom Kippur. But what happens the next day? We didn't close the doors, meaning we didn't guard this experience. We left it open and it flowed right out. So again, in Kabbalistic terms, this is the idea of having to make a vessel to hold the light. But here the whole metaphor is the water of blessing. Then he says something really important. He says, the greatest blessing in the world is not only that God's blessing reaches me, but if I have a taste that it is just for me. It means I must have some kind of private connection with God. You can keep all the laws in the world, but if it is not this private connection to God, it won't last. It might not last. For those of you who remember, in one of the recent classes, I was talking about the difference between the beauty of Eretz Israel and the beauty in the world. And I was saying there's tremendous beauty in the world, especially in nature. And I remember listing many of the places. I remember talking about the Rocky Mountains and just majestic beauty. But in Israel, our highest mountain, Mount Hermon, is like a bunny hill in the Rocky Mountains. Our biggest waterfall is like this tiny little comparison to hundreds of huge waterfalls all over America. So why do we react to the holiness of the land of Israel so deeply? And I said, because it's mine. It's my waterfall. It's my mountain. Means all the difference in the world. And I remember one time, I just happened to have seen this. I was in a place where Rav Shlomo was talking to a young woman, and she had her baby there. And Rav Shlomo said, "Your baby is the cutest baby in the world." And of course, at that moment, he meant it. And the woman said, "All babies are beautiful." I'll never forget this. Rav Shlomo looked at her like, I'd say seriously, and said, but in your eyes, your baby has to be the most beautiful in the world. I'll never forget that. It was such an important teaching. And so that's what he's saying here. So he continues, I can keep Shabbat all my life, but is it my Shabbos? Take Shabbos into your house. It has to be your own Shabbos or it won't last. It has to be my own Shabbos, my davening, my pair of tefillin, my sukkah. Now this might sound like a little egotistical, but it's not what he's saying at all. What he's saying is you can make a sukkah and you keep all the laws of sukkah because the Torah tells us to make a sukkah and to keep the laws of sukkah. But when you invest your time and energy in building a sukkah, and when you go into your sukkah, you to use the vernacular, you blow your mind with how beautiful this sukkah is and how meaningful it is, and how you just are just in awe of being able to sit in this sukkah that I made. It's very, very different experience than sitting in a sukkah and fulfilling all of the mitzvot. So he's saying here, you have to make everything yours. And the same thing with God. You know, we start the Amidah. We say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. The God of Avram, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov. And we know the Torah doesn't waste any words, and our sages didn't waste words either. Why couldn't it just say, Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Why does it have to repeat 3 times the God of? And so one of the most beautiful answers is, as much as it was the God of Avram, which he gave over to Yitzchak, but until Yitzchak made God his God, it didn't completely get in. And then Yitzchak taught everything he knew about God to Yaakov. But Yaakov had to make it his God. And of course, this is a typical thing with parents and children and teachers and students. You can teach as much as you can, but ultimately it's the child or the student or the friend that has to be able to integrate it and make it their own. It's what's called ownership. Okay, now he introduces the next blessing, which is Ya'er Hashem Panav Elecha Ve-yichuneka. That God should the countenance of God should enlighten you and give you grace. So he says, now open your hearts. It is not enough that you receive God's blessing. I want you to have the privilege to receive the shine of God's face. When it gives you the blessing, don't look at the gift, look at the face of God. So I skipped a paragraph, and he brought an example. He said, if you want to know how people love each other, if you give a gift to someone you love, if they take the gift and they're looking at the gift and they're saying, thank you so much, it's such a nice gift. He said there's a big difference, though, that if you give the gift and while they're holding the gift, they look back right in your eyes and say, thank you so much, it's such a beautiful gift. In other words, you're not focusing on the gift, you're focusing on the love of the person who gave the gift. So here, where the verse says that God should enlighten his countenance and should put it on you and give you grace. So he said, I'll read it again. He says, now open your hearts. It is not enough that you receive God's blessing. I want you to have the privilege to receive the shine of God's face. When it gives you the blessing, don't look at the gift, look at the face of God. Now, of course, we know that God does not have a physical face. There's nothing physical we can attach to this. But what he's talking about is a level of consciousness where we're not focusing on the gift, we're focusing, God, thank you so much for giving me this gift. Now he says like this, I can learn Torah and look at the words, which is very beautiful. But while I am looking at the words, I can almost see Hashem's face shining into me. Because we have this concept that the Torah is the will of God. And we're told in the Zohar that God, the Torah, and Israel are one. So there's a way, what he's explaining is there's a way to look at the words of the Torah and you translate them. This is what they mean. You look up the Rashi, you look up Rabbi Nachman, and you learn what you have to learn. There's another way that when you're looking at the words, you're aware that God's face is shining through the words. It's a different way to look at the words of the Torah. And that's why in Kabbalah and Chassidut, something we've mentioned many, many times is that even though there are many types of meditation, the most exclusively type of Jewish meditation is through the words of the Torah, is to understand what the words mean on a deeper level, to understand the gematrias, to understand the permutations of the letters. And this we do by looking at them. And the more we look at them and we see God's face shining through the Torah, the more these innovative ideas jump out at us. And now he discusses the word Ve-yichuneka, and that God should grant you grace. When someone asks you for a favor and you feel as though you have to do it, and you don't know why you are doing it, it's probably because of Cain. There is just something about this person. It's not that they are so beautiful, not that they are so clever, but they have something that makes you feel drawn to them. So here's just an example. Someone asks you to do a favor, and you don't even know why you're going to do this favor. You don't think it out intellectually. Should I? Shouldn't I? What do I get out of it? What do I don't get out of it? The way that the person is reacting with you, you just feel this. You're drawn to their Cain, their grace. Now, this is a very, very important word in the Torah in general, and especially in Kabbalah, because the first time this word appears in the Torah is when God is about to destroy the whole world. And then the last verse of Parshat Nasso says, "V'Noach matzah chen be'enei Hashem," and Noach found grace in the eyes of God. And so this, obviously, that's a very important thing. But I learned from Rav Ginsburg that this verse, if you'll notice, the name Noach and Cain are reversed. Same letters, but reversed. And so we're told that Cain, what does grace mean on a deep level? It's what's called a symmetrical type of beauty. that there's something that is, everything is in its place. When something is symmetrical, just everything is where it's supposed to be. And there's a tremendous beauty in that, tremendous beauty in symmetry. Actually, in the paintings behind, they're not paintings, it's jewelry, you see an example of symmetry. The spherot is a perfect example of a state of symmetry. And so Rav Shlomo says that there's something that makes you drawn to them, because everything's in its place. Everything is the way it should be. You're not picking up on there's some distraction here. There's some extraneous energy here. Rav Shlomo continues. When we say Ve-yichuneka, we mean that you should have something in your soul that is so precious that God will continue to bless you, even if you don't deserve it. I can give my child a gift because they were good this week. But how sweet does that sound to you? Not so sweet. You did something, I reward you. Mazel tov. So he says, because I'm only giving them something because they deserve it. A real gift doesn't depend on deserving it. A gift means I don't know if you deserve it or not. My connection with you is not because you deserve it. My connection with you is because I'm so deeply connected to you. So obviously between people, this is a very, very beautiful thing. Now, there's nothing wrong, especially with young children, of rewarding them. Rav Shlomo is not saying that. Reward is a very important thing, especially for children. They thrive on having good behavior rewarded. But he's trying to say something much deeper here. He's saying that our connection to other people shouldn't always be on do you deserve it or not. It's if my connection with you is strong enough, then I'm going to give to you even in those moments when you don't deserve it. Some people are very beautiful, but they are missing Ve-yichuneka, this charm which is a heavenly gift. Sometimes people may not be so beautiful, but they have this Cain. When the Ribbono Shel Olam gives me that which I need, and my inside pool is filled, and God gives me the strength to guard it, he's like reviewing everything he set up to now. And God gives me the strength to guard it because he gives me it to me face to face, then Ve-yichuneka. The whole world is charming, and I'm also charming to people. So that's how we end the second blessing here. And now the third blessing, and that is Yissa Hashem Panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. That God should lift up his countenance. This is very interesting because it's the same root as the name of the parsha. That's how we started, Nasso. When you lift up the tribe of Gershon, even those who have fallen, Gam hem, also them. So here we're asking God that God should lift up his face to you, and he should grant you peace. So here again, Rav Shlomo turns it around. Here it says that God should lift up his face to you, as if it's God who's lifting up his face to you. But Rav Shlomo in a certain way turns it around and says, when God gives me a gift, as it were, God is up there and I'm down here, which is awkward. So the blessing is that God should lift you up so high for just 1 second that you're on the same level, as it were, that Hashem is. Imagine I am 7 feet tall and my child is very short. I'm standing up there and I could give it to them from up high, or I can sit down on the floor and be on the same level as they are and give it to them. It's so much deeper that way. So please, God, for this 1 second, when you give me a gift, can you and I be on the same level? I just want to feel close. As much as we are just human beings and God is God, for 1 second, let's just be one. That's such classic Rav Shlomo. That was just such a classic Rav Shlomo. I can say when you were in his presence and he would say things like this, it would just melt your heart. I can't put it any other way. So now he says again, Yissa Hashem Panav Veyishmerecha. God should lift me up for 1 second so that I should be on the same level. And then it says, Veyismerecha Shalom. And God should give you peace. Do you think you can bring peace by arguing? It happens so often in marriage counseling. What do you say? What does she say? When did he hurt your feelings last time? When is he planning to do it the next time? This is not bringing peace to the world. We have to do it. What we have to do is to lift ourselves up. Lift yourself out of this whole world. You cannot go to the same place where you were fighting and make peace. It has to be a different place, a different space. Then he says like this, as much as you would like to bring peace to the whole world, start with whoever you meet. For that moment you are with them, lift them up to a higher level. People love you the most when you lift them up just a bit, even an inch. The same argument which brings war will not bring peace. There will never be peace in the world unless we lift the world up to a different space. So, of course, he's talking about consciousness, that we have to have a different consciousness to have peace. This, of course, is what we are praying for the Mashiach in the Messianic era, is that we will truly be just lifted out of what we'll call now our normative consciousness and be able to see everything on a completely different level. Rav Shlomo is saying that's like the only way. Okay, we're almost done here. So he says, now I want you to open your hearts in the deepest depths. Leible Eiger says that the Ribono Shel Olam created the world twice. Bereshit bar Elokim, in the beginning, God created, was the first time. But the world was still shaky. On Shavuot, God created the world a second time. So I have to say that he's actually taking from a Rashi, very, very important Rashi, where it says, Vayhi erev boker yom hashishi. It was evening and it was morning, the 6th day. Rashi points out, it doesn't say the 2nd day, the 3rd day. It just says evening and morning, 2nd day. Why the extra hey here? So Rashi says that is alluding to another 6th day, a different 6th day. Which day is that? The 6th of Sivan, Shavuos. And Rashi says that until Shavuos, it was as if the whole world was not on a strong foundation. And there's a midrash says that God said to the people of Israel, if you receive the Torah today, good. If not, I will return the world to chaos and void. Meaning the only purpose for which I created the world was that eventually Torah would come into the world and give it a strong foundation. So that's what Rav Shlomo is saying here. He said the first time the world was still shaky. It wasn't on a firm foundation. But on Shavuos, God created the world a second time. So Rav Shlomo says, what's the difference between the first creation and the second creation? The first creation was to live, to marry, to have children, to do your thing. This inside filling of the pool type of light was created on Shavuos. In other words, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created the physical world. He created human beings. And we do our thing. But as Rashi said, but that was a shaky foundation. Only when we received the Torah, that means that we opened up the pool inside to allow the blessings to truly fill us. Until Har Sinai, it was as if our inner pools were closed for business. Only at Har Sinai, and one of the reasons is we came to Har Sinai today. Today is Rosh Chodesh Sivan. On this day, it says, Veyichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ahar. Israel camped across from the mountain on the first day of Sivan. And Rashi, of course, points out, excuse me, that the word Vayichan is written in the singular. Everyone knows this one. And that's to teach us that they came to Har Sinai Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, with like one person with one heart. And so that is what's coming down on Shavuos. That when we come with one person with one heart, all of a sudden our hearts open up, the pool is open for business, and the blessings can come pouring down. So here he ends from Leible Eiger, who says that after Rosh Hashanah, we read Bereshit Bar Elokim. In other words, Rosh Hashanah is connected to the new year of, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But after Shavuot, we begin by learning Yevarechecha Hashem Ve-yichuneka, because Parshat Nasso will always come right after Shavuos. So he says the new creation is represented by being open, that we're asking God, God should bless you and keep you. That is what makes a strong foundation. It gives the world its foundation. So we should be blessed this coming Shavuot to open up our inner hearts, our pool, our vessels, and to become a fitting vessel for God's granting us the Torah once again.